I'm Ted Chapin, Chairman of the American Theater Wing. Today we are acknowledging the American in our name by celebrating the 10 nonprofit companies across the country to have received the Wing's $10,000 National Theater Company grants for emerging theaters this year. All the companies have been in existence between 5 and 15 years, and each has made a substantial contribution to theater in their hometowns. And those towns stretch from coast to coast, from Philadelphia and New York on the east, to Fayetteville, Austin, Denver, and Albuquerque in the middle, to San Diego and the Watts District in Los Angeles. These particular companies were chosen for their courage, creativity, and inspiring programs.
All of these companies, as diversified as they were, they had one thing in common, and they all just wanted to enlighten as well as entertain. And that's what great theater is. Good theater is always theater that's relevant and challenges us, you know, to go beyond our comfort zones. And if it's good, it's the kind of theater that transforms our lives for the better.
I am delighted that all of the recipients are joining us today to discuss the unique work they do. Representatives of theaters that have a community-driven mission now join us. Dennis Gromelski from Fusion in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Over the course of the last 10 years that we have found is primary to what we do. It is fusing together in a community that didn't have professional theater before, period. We are it, the only producing equity theater in New Mexico. And as we've had our blinders on and really gone forward with that mission, everything else in the community has come along.
Seema Sueko of the Olelo Performing Arts Company in San Diego, California.
If we can collectively work with small and mid-sized companies that are innovating the field, the large companies that have are the flagship companies in our respective states, might be facing some challenges, as well as the national funders, and get together and as equal partners, all of us, to be able to come up with the national solutions that will advance the field.
Rachel May from Synchronicity Theater in Atlanta, Georgia.
We're dedicated to empowering women and girls through the work that we do, and we're dedicated to activating the community by doing great theater that inspires people to go back into their communities and enact social change.
And David Mack from Watts Village Theater Company in Los Angeles.
One of our challenges has been to respond to the unique needs of this community. The Watts community in Los Angeles, a predominantly Latino and African American community, we need to bring theater to them, to the streets. And so that's what we strive to do. Bring theater back to the streets where it really started. We believe that's the future for our community.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So, Dennis, you're the only professional theater in the entire state in terms of community.
Yeah, our community is really about our artistic community. And we're the only producing equity theater company in the state, and because of that we find it our responsibility to be and serve as the regional theater community, as other bigger theater companies do around the country, and bring everything that means to our local community. And very specifically and very importantly, it's been a function of who we are since the beginning, as an outlet and a home for the professional artist and everything that means, specifically paycheck and health insurance, and actually, quite honestly, a place to play. If you're a professional actor and you don't have any outlets, it's a bit of a problem for those who love to live in the area and yet don't have any outlets.
That's great. Seema, I hope I did okay on the title.
I'm so impressed that you could say Mo'olelo and my last name, Sueko. I'm very impressed.
Well, thank you. Tell us about the company.
Sure. Mo'olelo Performing Arts Company is a community-focused, socially conscious equity theater company. We were founded in 2004 in San Diego, and we currently do 3 shows a year, and those plays are selected with two main criteria. One is they must have significant roles for actors of color. The other is that they must offer the opportunity for us to outreach to communities that don't traditionally attend the theater. So then with each show, we then spend 6 to 18 months prior to production doing what we call a consensus organizing for theater process, which is doing the community outreach work to build stakeholders in each production and then try to serve the communities, the target communities, in a variety of ways, making the production sort of the central component of it. And then alongside with that, we are a green theater company as well. We created green theater categories and guidelines and the Green Theater Choices Toolkit, and that has since been used by theater companies from Australia to Belgium and some Broadway professionals as well. So that's just a little bit about Mo'olelo.
That's great.
Thanks.
Rachel, Synchronicity Atlanta?
Well, we actually have a lot of synchronicity with Mo'olelo. We are coming into our 14th season, and we're a theater that works to use great theater to activate the community towards social action. So we produce plays and build partnerships around those plays in order to help the community, help people in the community know how to go back into their own spaces and make change. So we produce our Bold Voices series, which is plays often by female playwrights. We have a really strong mission to also raise up and empower the voices of women and girls. And so we produce those plays, usually plays, I don't like issue plays, but we do try to do work that has really meaty ideas and often strong themes for women, and so that we want our audience to walk away with lots of things to talk about. And we have a family series where we do plays based on books for children and families. And we try to do really great theater that happens to work for kids and families. We don't want to do children's theater. So we try not to do, there's a lot we're trying not to do because we want to do really good theater. And we also have a program that sprung out of a play 8 years ago called, the program's called Playmaking for Girls, where we go into detention centers and work with teenage girls who are incarcerated and help them write plays and perform plays about their lives. So that's
And the company was started by women, yes?
started by 4 women. I'm one of the founders, and the other ones have all moved off into other projects. But yeah, we have a really strong commitment to raising up women's voices. So often a lot of our designers are women. One of my favorite stories is in tech, you know, with a whole bunch of female designers. I said, I'm going to Home Depot, what do we need? And from like 6 places in the room, everyone said, chocolate! And so I think, you know, you're in synchronicity when that's what's needed from Home Depot because of all the women.
Complete synchronicity.
That's right, that's right.
Excellent.
David Watts.
Yes, Watts Village Theater Company. We're the only show in Watts, so we're the only professional independent theater company in Watts. We've been around for 15 years. We were developed actually out of a residency from Cornerstone Theater Company.
I noticed
and we were co-founded by Lynn Manning, a poet who's still with us, playwright as well, and Quentin Drew, who is our founding artistic director, who actually passed away around 6 years ago. And so for 15 years we've been doing all original work. Contemporary social issues is what we focus on in the Watts community. This is an underserved, predominantly African American and Latino community. It's actually now over 80% Latino. Oh. And so since there's not yet any permanent theater or professional theater space in Watts, we're nomadic. So we perform everywhere. We perform on the streets, in the parks.
I noticed Meet Me at Metro.
Yes, and we perform on and around the Metro. Our signature show is Meet Me at Metro. We do it annually. We just finished our second show, Meet Me at Metro 2. And so what we do is we take the audience on the train, and you get off the train station, and there's a theater company doing a show. Then you get back on the train, you go to the next station, you get off, there's another theater company doing a show. And we collaborate with 7 different theater companies throughout Los Angeles and actually New York as well. And we're open to other theater companies around the country, but each of them do like a 10-minute piece all the way down the line.
What a cool idea, especially in a town that at least a lot of people on the East Coast don't even realize there is a Metro in Los Angeles.
Yeah, it's not used very widely. People in Los Angeles love their cars.
I also wanted to ask about black words on white paper.
Black Words on White Pages.
Pages.
Yes, yes. And that's our signature playwriting series. That started in 2006. We also do that annually. So it's a new work. We will commission a playwright from an underserved community that has not been able to get their work published. And we will provide for them a director, a stage manager, and actors, and a place to perform their work. And so they will be able to write a piece about a certain social issue happening in the community, and we will develop that work for them and do a professional stage reading of it. And then if we get good feedback and if we get success from the stage reading based on the feedback from our community, then we'll go ahead and we'll turn that into a main stage production for them.
And I assume that all of you like the idea of new work and do a certain amount of new work, but how does that fit into the overall scheme, Seema?
We have commissioned a number of new plays. In our 7-year history, there are actually 3 new works that were created. Our very first play, a play called Remains, dealt with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and has since been done in Minnesota and in San Francisco by other companies. We commissioned a play about adoption back in 2005 by Kimberly, and which was involved interviews with people connected to the issues of adoption, and then produced that in 2007. So it was a long 2-year incubation period. And then most recently, we've commissioned a play called Sila, which looks at the intersections of race, class, and the environment and climate change, written by Chantal Bilodeau. And that has gone through a 2-year development process, and it involves puppetry and projections and a number of other things. So we're hoping to get some more funding to continue developing that piece of work.
And did your theater do Stick Fly?
We did, yes, just this past February, March, which was, fantastic to do, and it's wonderful to see that it's about to open on Broadway. How exciting.
I like the fact that when I asked you about the plays, you didn't bring it up. I had to bring it up because I think there's a general sense that the theaters across the country long for New York or want plays to come to New York, but also so much of the vitality is in the community. So I think that's great.
Well, one of the ways we've been doing new work is with companies more of this size, where we've been doing rolling or joint world premieres. We've done one a year for the past 5 years, where we have a play we love and we reach out to 2 or 3 other theaters around the country and say, hey, do you guys want to do this too? And we all do it within a year, and we all get the world premiere status for the play. So we really help launch the playwright in the play, and we're able to all get world premieres, So it's actually taking it away from the New York model a little bit and sort of taking it into our own hands, I think, which has been a great way for us to build partnerships with other theaters around the country and help raise national profile for what we're doing. So that's,
Excellent.
I was like, I want to see some of this you're working on so that we can, I'd love to talk about that.
We've taken, with the original play route, we've taken we have a short works festival called The Seven, which will be in its 7th year. And by short works, we say try to limit it to 10, 11 pages, not necessarily 10 minutes, and you know what that means. So over the course of the last 7 years, we've really been able to create some terrific relationships with playwrights, where we're then identifying and taking the next step, getting into play readings, and actually, just saying a little bit earlier, we have to be very careful how we balance with our theater-going community in our town. Acting as a regional theater company, we do bring the premieres regionally of Red and Dowd and August Osage County and plays like that. But we're also able to, as a result of this relationship with these playwrights, a 2-time winner actually of the festival, we're premiering a piece, soon to be classic holiday piece called "You Can't Get a Decent Margarita at the North Pole," and we're opening that in December. And so it's been a really wonderful process because, as you know, throwing original work at a local audience that might be expecting something else is always the big challenge of balancing that art and commerce, and I think we're at the point now where our model really will be towards producing a lot more new original work.
You should do a double bill with Kafka on Ice.
Yes, that's right.
And margaritas and ice skating. Hasn't your company become the sort of linchpin of an arts center in downtown Albuquerque?
Yeah, I also, like everyone else, we wear a lot of different hats. I also serve as New Mexico has 6 arts and cultural districts, and I serve as downtown Albuquerque's as the manager of that arts and cultural district. And it's actually a state program developed through state tourism and the economic development program in the state. And we're identifying, the big catchphrases: innovation, collaboration, and placemaking. As you always know what grant's coming up by who's saying those words most often.
The new normal.
Yeah. And we're actually our theater we moved into. It's an old 1910. Actually predates New Mexico by 2 years. An old the phone number and book that we found in the old, it's a fruit and vegetable warehouse next to the train tracks. The phone number that we saw in a picture that said number 279. So the Wild West, Albuquerque. And in our area, we were the first to kind of move in and call it home. It's just a couple blocks off of the main part of downtown. And all of a sudden that's rolling and becoming the Warehouse Arts District. And importantly, our what we do there, our mission has been a big part of that. You know, we're getting the infill with restaurants, and all of a sudden developers are getting interested in having loft spaces, and we know what can happen to parts of town when that starts to happen as well. Within 5 years, all of a sudden the artists are gone. But we're taking very important steps as well to see what we can do about really keeping it a place. You know, it's place making. It's where things are made. You know, and Albuquerque is wonderfully notorious for a place where things get done.
We're similar as well in that vein, working with non-arts partners as well as other arts collaborators in the community, because Los Angeles, of course, has many theaters. Actually, technically, there's more small theater companies in Los Angeles than there are in New York City.
Tell the movie business that.
Exactly. But in the Watts community, we are actually the only one out there, and a lot of that culture has not been able to connect, even though the people of Watts are very culturally rich. And so what we've done is we've reached out to the politicians, and there's actually a Supervisor Mark Ridley Thomas, who runs the 2nd District, which is our district area, and he has an empowerment congress. And we were actually able to serve on the Arts and Culture Committee, which was just formed as part of that empowerment congress. So it's about working with the politicians and working with other community leaders to help bring arts to our community.
And are you also in the forefront of the Latino and African American community working together?
Yes, and they work together all the time. And they work together really well. One of our partners is the Watts Century Latino Organization, which is one of the biggest nonprofits in Watts. But there has been a shift. About 20 years ago, Watts was predominantly African American community, and it has been becoming very rapidly predominantly Latino community. And the gangs, and there's a lot of crime that has been plaguing that community. And so there's a lot of what you see in the media will be the conflict between the Latino and African American communities. But what we like to focus on is how they work together and how they produce beautiful work and beautiful communities.
And it also sounds like Atlanta, which is a very varied community, but that you are sort of cut across a lot of sections.
We do, and again, it depends on sort of what our programming is. You asked a new works question, and a couple of years ago we did a project called Women in War. And we interviewed almost 50 women whose lives had been impacted by war, all in the Atlanta area, and we built a piece around those stories. And what we did was partner with the refugee community, which is huge there. So we had Somali women and Sudanese women and women who had been soldiers in Iraq, American soldiers in Iraq. I mean, just an incredible, and these 2 twin women who had been missionaries in the Congo. And so, so we really reached into a number of communities through that. And we, in a similar way as you guys, were doing a lot of these partnerships that we try to bring forward over time, because you don't want to just sort of get together with a community and then never go back to them. So we've done a number of projects that have intersected with the veteran community and with the military community and with the juvenile detention facilities and that whole community. So we have a number of relationships with different groups that we're continuing to nurture and we really think about that as we pick our plays. What's the next part of that conversation that we can have so that we're continuing to, to engage in the conversation and see what we can do to help change.
And also, how about within the artistic community of Atlanta?
We have, we believe a lot in nurturing new artists who are coming up into the community. So we have a very strong intern program. They tend to be young women, although we have a really great young male intern right now who's strong and brave to be with us. He's okay with a lot of estrogen in the room, But so we really try to bring up new artists and teach them in a very positive way. We try to have very little chaos and really respect and nurture all of the artists and the people that we work with. And Atlanta's a very sort of free market in terms of artists because it's a right-to-work state in Georgia. So the whole equity, non-equity, professional, non-professional dynamic is very different. So we have a tremendous group of artists, and it's a very collaborative community. All the theaters work really well together.
And Seema, San Diego has an extraordinary collection of artistic institutions. How do you fit in with them well?
Yeah, definitely. So I think San Diego's best well known for the major LORT theaters in our region, the Old Globe, Globe and La Jolla Playhouse, and of course San Diego Rep. And we all do play well together. La Jolla Playhouse started a program a few years ago called their Resident Theater Company program, and Mo'olelo was the inaugural resident theater company at La Jolla Playhouse, where essentially they give a residency for a year long to a company that had been previously nomadic, or gypsy, as we would like to say. And then we've also produced work at Mo'olelo that has then gone on to the stage at the Old Globe. In 2006, we did a play called Since Africa, working with the refugee communities, and it did really well. It sold out before we opened, and it got the attention of folks at the Old Globe. They decided to produce it in 2009 and then hired me to direct it there. So there's a lot of learning across the scope and the ecology of theaters in San Diego.
Theater is nothing if not collaborative. Anyway, thank you guys. This is great.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Back to talk a little more in a moment. From theater companies that are ensemble-based, creating their own works. Samantha Schmitz from Bunport Theater Company in Denver, Colorado.
Our greatest challenge is trying to thrive in Denver, trying to be relevant and vital in our community, and do work that challenges our audience and ourselves.
Dito Van Ragersburg from Pig Iron Theater Company in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
I toast both the fleet of footness of an actor who has to get it right the first time, and the desire, the ability to go deep and think about profound things and take that moment, that Hawaiian moment, I forget what it's called. Okina. The okina that is so important that the theater allows us to do.
And Thomas Graves of Rude Mechanicals, located in Austin, Texas.
We're lucky to be in Austin and have an audience that wants to participate in the creation of a play, that knows it isn't finished until they show up and bring their own associations and dreams to the piece. An audience that holds us accountable with honesty, but never dismissiveness.
Welcome, everyone. I think this would be a great opportunity to explain a little bit about your theater company, since I think a lot of people who watch these programs may not know each one of your companies. So ladies first, Sam, tell us about Bunport.
Bunport is an ensemble-based company in Denver, Colorado, and we work collaboratively from conception to production. There are 6 collaborators in our main company, and we, from idea to show, the 6 of us work together, fighting it out to figure out what we will produce and put on stage for our audiences to see.
And what kinds of shows do you do?
We do a lot of adaptations of works and biographies. The show that we have coming up is a remount called Kafka on Ice, and it is a retelling, a kind of dreamy retelling of Franz Kafka's life using the metamorphosis as a base story, performed on synthetic ice in our warehouse. So we have a theater that we have transformed into, or a warehouse that we transformed into a black box theater, and we put some plastic ice together and actually ice skate on it with some giant cockroaches and some telling of Kafka's life.
So truth in advertising.
Exactly. Kafka on ice. We didn't want to, we're not lying, on ice.
And Denver is a fairly enlightened theater town. How do you fit into the Denver scene?
Denver is a great theater town. There are not a ton of people doing all original works in Denver, so we fill that niche. We're not as experimental as some other theaters, so we are original, but we're not like what people would call experimental theater. So you can come and see a work of fiction turned into a play, or a biography turned into a play.
Great. Now Thomas, Rude Mechanicals, Austin, Texas. I don't know where to begin. Explain what Rude Mechanicals is all about and why Texas is home to it.
Yes, we have a lot in common with Bunport. We are a theater collective. We've been around for 15 years. We have 6 co-producing artistic directors and create new works for the stage collaboratively. So we devise them from scratch. And we present about 1 show a year. Austin, Texas is a great home for us. There's a lot of new work being made in Austin. So we feel right at home there.
I did notice that one of the shows you had done was a revival of the Dionysus in '69, a rather shocking show in its time. How did Austin take to that?
We did Dionysus in '69 last December, which is a recreation of the performance group's production in 1968. It was very well received by Austin audiences. There is a lot of nudity in the show and a lot of audience participation, sometimes happening at the same time. And Austin totally, jumped right in and went along with it, and it was a lot of fun.
And Austin is a college town, University of Texas, right? Is that part of why you get away with nudity, do you think? Or?
Austin is it's a college town. It's a very affordable town, so it was a great town to start a theater company in because it allowed us to, to make work and make a living doing it. And it's also a music town, so people understand the idea of getting together. A lot of people have bands, so the idea of coming together and everybody, saying, oh, I'm going to write this song, or, oh, let's try this thing. So the idea of collaboratively devising something isn't new to Austin, and they really like weird stuff, and so our stuff goes over pretty well.
And how did you all start?
I was not there at the inception. The Rude Mex grew out of a group of people that went to a summer program doing Shakespeare. It's called Shakespeare at Winedale, and they go out into the country and put on Shakespeare plays. And so there were several company members started out there and decided to move to New York. And it was just, they couldn't make a living here. It was too hard, so they moved back to Austin and started the Rude Mex.
That's great. Dito, tell us about Pig Iron in Philadelphia.
Pig Iron. Well, we are also about 15 years old. We came out of college all together. We all went to Swarthmore College, and we also took a detour to New York, found it a little bit too difficult financially, and then around the time that Philadelphia Live Arts and Fringe Festival came up, so it's a great festival that happens every September in our city. We all decided to move to Philadelphia, and it was kind of a beautiful harmonic convergence of things that we wanted to have happen, unusual approaches to theater, unusual audience performer relationships, sort of theater that moves around the space and stuff. That the festival really encouraged. We were also really interested in, so that was kind of a beautiful takeoff. And Philadelphia also has a great number of foundations that support theater, so we've been lucky. Do you have a home, or do you move around? We used to just have an office, and just this year we started a school called the Pig Iron Pig Iron School for Advanced Performance Training, or APT, and that allowed us to get a space that is mainly the big studio classroom of the school, but now we can also rehearse there. We rehearsed our first play ever in our own home this summer, and the offices are just upstairs on the second floor. And because Philadelphia does have a fair amount of arts, music, and theater, how did you find an audience? I think a big part of it was this connection with the festival and finding audiences that were a little bit more daring. And now we have a sort of proven track record, so people come to see our stuff. And we're not about quantity. We can't offer like 8 shows a year, but we can offer a new show every year that's completely from scratch, and we can offer shows from our repertoire that we can revive. So I think people like the idea of seeing something kind of that feels handmade or hand-stitched or touched by human hands. I did notice Chekhov Lizard Brain, a show that was new to me. What's that about? Is that one of your hits? This will maybe explain our process. Dan Rothenberg, who's one of the other artistic, we have 3 artistic directors. He was reading a book by Temple Grandin called Animals in Translation. And she is a very interesting woman. She's autistic, but she's high-functioning autistic to the point where she could actually write a book. And she wrote this book about how she feels as an autistic person more connected to animals, and that she sort of has these theories about how her brain structure as an autistic person relates better to an animal's, especially a mammal like a cow. And she went on to design a lot of the slaughterhouses, actually, but humane slaughterhouses in the United States. So that's on one side. Right. And then I was really interested in working on Chekhov, just as a challenge for us as a company. And we just kind of weirdly mashed those two ideas together. And interestingly, we started talking a lot about neuroscience and Chekhov. And we, something that really unlocked Chekhov for us, we did a whole week on the Three Sisters. And one thing that really kind of illuminated Chekhov for us was the idea of ambivalence. She talks about, Temple Grandin talks about how she doesn't understand what a love-hate relationship would be like, because she feels like her emotions are pretty pure. And we felt like, oh, well, in Chekhov, there's so much emotional ambivalence. There are people having emotions at the same time. So then we just tried this experiment of feeling two emotions at the same time. Like, what would it be like to feel sad and happy, like right bumping up against each other, really vibrating? And then suddenly that seemed to work in terms of a way to play Chekhov scenes, because there's really a lot of intense situations happening right up against each other. Anyway, long story short, we took those experiments with actually brain structures, lizard brain, which is the lowest part of the brain, the dog brain, which is the middle part, and the human brain. We started talking a lot and making up weird exercises based on these three parts of the brain. And then we made this Chekhovian story about three brothers who sell their house. And then Chekhov Lizard Brain was born.
Does that sound like a familiar process to either of you?
Smashing things together, yes. Bringing in, a lot of times the way that we work, we conceive the set design at the same time that we're conceiving of the storyline. So we have pieces that are based on a show called and this is My Significant Bother, which is based on James Thurber's short stories, and the main set piece is a bed that transforms throughout the piece. There are, I think, 8 short stories, and each time the bed transforms, and it goes from a made bed in the first scene to a totally destroyed bed, and that is a court scene. The parts of the bed fold down, and there's a trap door, and all of this stuff happens. And then in the final scene, throughout the show, the piece, the marriage is destroyed, basically, and through the short stories. And in the final scene, the wife confronts her mistress, and the bed is remade, and the wife basically reclaims her husband. But it's the same, it's a kind of idea where you have an idea, which is a bed, and you have these stories about marriage, and how can they come together in a way that makes sense, if not just to us, to everyone watching it as well. But there's a lot of mashups that happen in collaboration, because you're talking, it's 6 people bringing together whatever they are reading about at that time, and they're like, Moby Dick, but what about this? Mm-hmm. And nobody's ever read Moby Dick, and how can we get that across, and stuff like that happens. So,
do you have a hierarchy within an ensemble company, or is it really democratic and everybody one man, one vote?
Ours is socialist. Ours is very much fight for your vote. Like, we all either agree, or if we've been fighting it out for days, then we finally vote, and then we either live with it or come in the next day and are like, I still am not happy with that. We still have to keep talking about it, because in the end, we as a group of 6 are responsible for everything that is seen. It's not, you can't blame a designer, you can't blame a director, you can't say I'm just an actor, because you are an integral part in it. So we have to agree at least on what the end product is. But.
And we decide everything by consensus. We use consensus decision making, both in our business decisions and in the artistic decisions. So it's not even one person, one vote. It's that everyone has to come to a single agreement before we move forward.
Have anybody left the company in the history?
Yes, there have been people to leave the company. No, it is not easy at all, and there's a lot of conflict, and you know, we certainly do fight in the rehearsal room, but I think it's a really positive thing, and great stuff, I think, is generated through that tension and through that conflict. You know, we were talking about the creative process. We have a similar creative process where we go away on artistic retreat, talk about what we're interested in, what we're passionate about, and everybody brings something to the table, often very different things. And that's a similar thing where you've got something A and something maybe X, and you put them together, and it's the conflict there that can create something hopefully unique and original.
And so what are the challenges for the future?
Well, there's the perennial challenge of time and money. And then I think another challenge that theater always faces is audience building. And how do we engage with audiences in a time of, you know, the internet and movies and things like that. Yeah, time and money are the big ones.
Time and money, and how they go together. Yeah, I feel like I think we all would agree that our particular processes require more time because you're creating something that doesn't have a recipe. You're not making the recipe out of the book. You're writing the book. So I mean, our process sometimes takes up to 2 years from the initial inception of an idea to something that you can actually show someone and prove that you haven't been wasting time. So and actually it's been great to educate audiences about that in Philadelphia, about what exactly we're up to when it's taking so long. They're like, why is there so much time between Pig Iron premieres? And I think to bring up the sense of quality, to bring up the sense of we're really digging deep into this to make something that we really care about, it's just going to take longer, and you have to be patient, and that requires more money and more work weeks with more actors and creators and designers. And
did you feel you have a loyal audience that will ultimately be patient and wait?
I do. Yeah, I think I mean, we've gotten to the year of the dog, as they call it. You know, theater companies are supposed to die at 15, like a dog. Someone told me once.
Oh yeah.
And and the fact that we're here and we're still changing the course, but still doing our work, I think it means that we've passed the danger point, and we have an audience.
And Denver, there's still enough people in Denver?
Oh, we have an incredibly loyal audience. We're entering our 11th season, and with our first season, we were, like I was saying, trying to make our space as vital as possible. So we were doing a bi-weekly sitcom, a written sitcom every other week about a book club. And so we have audience members who saw that the first year and saw all 75 episodes of that sitcom over a 6-year period, and they come still to see our full-length shows and our off-night programming and stuff. And it's definitely like a family because they see the same 5 people every time on stage, and they see me at the box office and running the show and stuff. So they recognize us as well as us recognizing them. There's not the same distance that there is sometimes in theater, where you see people on stage and they're like movie stars or something, where they seem approachable in a different way. But our audience is like a family that keeps coming back. We keep getting them back in there. But it's great. It's fabulous.
That's great. Well, listen, thank you very much. Good luck to all of you, and we'll be back with some more conversation. Representing companies that are more traditional producing organizations, our guests are Bob Ford of Theater Squared from Fayetteville, Arkansas.
People dig live, intimate, and challenging work. Theater works and rocks. Our biggest challenge was, can we do an equity professional theater from the get-go in a town of 72,000 people? And yes, you can.
PJ Powers from Timeline Theater in Chicago.
A challenge as we go forward, as we are growing exponentially, is to find a way to reach more people with our work but not lose who we are, to stay true to our mission, to stay true to perhaps what is most important about Timeline's work, which is a connection with our audience and a dialogue we have with our audience every night.
And Jack Cummings of the Transport Group, right here in New York City.
I think one of our biggest challenges has been to, in the face of all that, with the help of the community and recognition like this, is to just like keep going down your own path that you're meant to go down, like no matter what, and not, you know, if it happens, it happens, but it should happen organically, and I think that's been one of our, you know, challenges.
So Jack, as the lone New Yorker in the group, tell us a little bit about Transport Group.
We are 10 years old, and we basically focus on revivals and new plays and new musicals as well, and that deal with American life in the 20th and 21st century by American authors.
And PJ, Timeline, Chicago, again, a rather robust theater town.
It is, it is. It's a great theater town, and we're proud to be sort of emerging as a new leader for a new generation of Chicago theater companies. But we're in our 15th season, and Timeline does plays inspired by history that connect to social and political issues of today. So we do new work, we develop new work, and we also do classic text, and try to find plays that really ignite a dialogue about how the past and present connect and interconnect.
And you provide your audiences with surround material so that they're not just coming in and being told this is a history play.
Yeah, we do. We really create an immersive experience in our lobby. We do sort of a art installation in our lobby. We have a great, totally flexible space that we reconfigure for every show. And once people walk through the door, we try to really transport them to the world or context or era of that play. And we share a lot of our research with our audience.
And where in Chicago are you?
We're in East Lakeview, which is just close to the lake, just a couple miles north of downtown.
So suburb or still Chicago?
Oh no, still very much Chicago. Yes, very much Chicago.
And what history did you link with the History Boys, which wasn't that one of your big successes?
Well, it was, yeah. The History Boys was sort of an interesting play for us because I guess other than the title, it isn't a history play per se, but really what Alan Bennett is getting at with that play is how history is made and how different people in different perspectives can see a story in totally different ways, and how history, both on a small personal level and on a much larger political and social level, gets made. And so it was an interesting sort of departure from our mission, but it was a wonderful experience.
That's great. Yeah. Now, Bob, Fayetteville, Arkansas, not known for its theater necessarily. Tell us about it.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah, we had, unlike New York and Chicago, we had the amazing good fortune of kind of inventing or, deciding from a broad array of theater what we wanted to do. And we have a wonderful performing arts center that brings in Broadway shows. So we do contemporary theater, somewhat cutting edge, challenging theater, and then we also have a new play festival which usually generates a new script every year or so that we then put on our main stage, so we premiere work as well.
And you have one successful one that was with a local playwright?
We do. We have a couple really, but one that was kind of stunning for us was a play called Sundown Town that was generated in our first new play festival. We commissioned it, and we asked the playwright to use bring in some of the indigenous music, country, folk, bluegrass music from the area, and put a story to it. And the story he decided to put to it was that of the sundown laws, which were in effect late into the last century across a broad swath of the Mid-South, the laws, written or unwritten, which said that if you're African American, get out of town by sundown. And he made an amazing, hard-hitting play out of it, and the most amazing thing about it was that play outsold anything else that had come before, including plays like Every Christmas Story Ever Told, which are huge hits for us, so that was exciting.
Do you feel that you take audiences from the Broadway series in Fayetteville, or do you encourage new audiences?
It's definitely a little of both. We definitely have people who prefer what we do, want to see what we do. We also know that we are benefiting by that Broadway series, which is really right next door. We're kind of housed in the same theater complex. So it's a little of both.
Do you try not to play at exactly the same time? Or
we definitely do not want to open the same night as Fiddler on the Roof.
Right.
So yeah, we dodge those.
And you have found a niche within the New York world that you feel is yours.
I think so. Yeah, I think that we do. I feel like when we attempt a revival, I do feel like we're doing a revival of certain plays that aren't necessarily looked into that often. You know, our production of The Boys in the Band was only the 3rd production in New York since its premiere in '68. And we just did a revival of Michael John LaChiusa's Hello Again, and that was the first revival of that since its premiere in '93. So, and then I feel with the new works, we're definitely exploring, if not the writer's subject matter, that would not necessarily be, I think, traditional fare.
And you did a new musical last year, did you not? That got quite some note?
Yes, we did a musical called Sea Rock City and Other Destinations by Brad Alexander and Adam Mathias. And it got a lot of great attention. And the book writer, Adam Mathias, won a Drama Desk Award for Outstanding Book of a Musical.
And is that a show that you encouraged, or you found it out there floating around? Because it had won a couple of awards.
It did. It started out, actually, the world premiere of that piece started at Barrington Stage Company in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. And they had a production there, and then they had a grant from the Richard Rodgers Foundation, which is a unique grant which gives a certain amount of money to actually a theater company to do either a workshop or a production of that show. And there's a timeline on it. If the authors don't find a theater to do their work in a certain amount of time, they lose the grant. And so they eventually came to us, and we had to make a decision very quickly. So we did a 3-week workshop of it, funded by the Richard Rodgers Foundation, and then it went so well, a year later we decided to do the production.
See, the quicksilver nature of the theater in New York.
Right, right. We had like 10 days to decide whether to do it or not, so, but I'm glad we did.
So PJ, how are you guys structured in Chicago?
Well,
you're artistic director, right?
I'm an artistic director.
Fairly traditionally structured?
Yeah, and our managing director, Elizabeth Aumann, the two of us are the heads of the organization, but we have a company of artists. We have 7 Timeline company members, and we work very collaboratively and democratically to pick all of the shows that we produce. It's a somewhat unique model. We're not an acting ensemble per se, which is probably the most predominant model in Chicago. Yeah. You know, obviously with Steppenwolf being the big model, but many other companies have really focused on being acting ensembles. We're not that. We're mission based. We talk about plays and ideas that we want to spark, and then once we choose those plays, we hire the best artists we can find to bring them to life.
But are there artists within the 7 of you, or are you also the management?
Yes, I mean some of us are also artists by trade. I trained to be an actor. I still do act occasionally, but when we get together to talk about the plays that we want to do, it isn't hey, let's do a play so that you can play this part and you can play this part and you can direct. Those discussions are really secondary. We're getting together to talk about topics and themes and stories that we want to tell.
Did you have trepidation entering the Chicago very full theater world, or were you pretty confident that you had something special?
Yes and yes. Timeline was founded in '97, and I'd been living there since '91, and had gone to school there at DePaul University to train. And I guess having gotten out of school and started working as an actor with different companies, I felt that a point of view and context was missing from a lot of the work that I was both seeing and doing. And the 5 others who started Timeline, I think we're also feeling that. And that was really the impetus to first come together, and the impetus to hatch this mission that was rooted in history, was to find plays that really were rooted in a context and that had a point of view. But from the outset, we really had our eye on building a company that would have longevity, and that was bigger than the sum of its parts. That was bigger than those of us who were starting it and running it.
And Bob, with Theater Square, do you get out in the rest of the state? Do you have an obligation to take it around and show your wares?
We do educationally. We may or may not have that obligation, but we feel it. And there's a program that we have going where we go down. Really, it's 5 or 6 hours away. Be like going down to Maryland or something, if you were in New York, to do to bring playwriting and what it can, the power of creating plays to students, high school students, in what's called the Arkansas Delta region, which is, you know, one of the more culturally bereft parts of the country, really. So yeah, we've got stuff like that ongoing.
And where do you pull the actors from?
We start with our local talent and try to cast from there as much as possible. We, when possible, when we feel that they're really the best for the role, we go to the MFA acting program at the university. And then depending on, I'm a playwright, so I do direct, but don't do a lot of directing. We guest direct out of Chicago and New York. If the director's from Chicago, we were just talking about this. We do casting in Chicago. Same thing in New York. So we get kind of a cross-pollination of sort of national actors, artistic pool, and local. And so it's a great kind of cross-pollination that goes on there.
And how far do the normal audience come from to get to the theater?
We have about half of our audience, of roughly 2,500 per show, comes from Fayetteville, which is a town of about 72,000 people. The other half comes from our greater, I guess it's called MSA, which is about 400,000. So we get a lot of people from that Bentonville, the Walmart headquarters, which is about half an hour away. So it's really kind of like New York, really. And we're always trying to convince people, you know, look, it's just a half-hour drive. If you were in New York, it would be
it would take you that
45 minutes on the subway, yeah.
And I assume you pull from all of this, the Chicago, the greater Chicago area?
Yeah, in terms of audience?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a very loyal audience from the city, but we also pull in a lot of people from the suburbs as well. And you know, while Timeline is still a small organization, a lot of the people that are our subscribers are, you know, at our theater one night and next night at the Goodman or at Steppenwolf for Chicago Shakespeare.
It's an envious spot. And Jack, is there anything in the New York world that you would like to grab a hold of?
You know, we always want huge audiences, but we found that our audiences really shift with the piece that we're doing or the writer we're premiering. It just kind of ebbs and flows. I'm starting to detect a small base of people who are following us from show to show, but we find that it really shifts just depending on the piece that we're doing.
And do you all find the internet as a very important way to get your audience these days, or?
Absolutely, and cost effective.
Yes.
Push that button.
Yeah.
That's
and
huge.
no old mail with the stamp on.
Yeah, we still do we do mail stuff, but as far as like the day-to-day, you know, marketing of it, it's very internet based.
Well, the one thing that the internet can't copy is actual live performances with live actors in front of a live audience.
Thank God.
That's always good. Use it to get everybody in. But
yeah.
Anyway, well, thank you for this. These programs are brought to you from the Graduate Center of the City University of New York in partnership with our friends at CUNY TV. On behalf of the American Theater Wing, I'm Ted Chapin, and thanks for joining us for another edition of Working in the Theater. I'm Ted Chapin, chairman of the American Theater Wing. The Wing has played a vital role in New York's theatrical life for more than 60 years. Best known for creating the Tony Awards, we stand for excellence, but we also support education in the theater, and our work reaches beyond Broadway in New York. The Working in the Theater television programs, which are supported by the Annenberg Foundation and the Dorothy Strelsin Foundation, are unequaled forums for discussions with today's most creative artists. Downstage Center's in-depth radio interviews were created in conjunction with XM Satellite Radio and can be heard on our website. For people who are starting their careers, we have a 2-week boot camp for aspiring actors from colleges across the country called Springboard NYC. And our theater intern group provides a forum for young people who are starting their careers to build a professional network. All of the American Theater Wing's educational and media programs are available for free on demand from our website, americantheaterwing.org. Thanks for your interest in the Wing, and thanks for watching.